So, Not Just Another Coming Out Story is a show that I'm currently writing with LGBT homeless youth at Green Chimneys, which is a center for LGBT runaway and homeless youth and youth in foster care. So the Point Foundation, the Palette Fund, gave me a scholarship to be able to work at Green Chimneys, and basically they get sort of an extra pair of hands, an intern, at no cost to the organization. So it's a really great way to be able to sort of create my own job and to really help out an organization that could use it. So we currently have a survey that's online, and that will be online until August 7th. And we're gathering stories from people all around the world about coming out. And we're basically looking at not just the sort of usual coming out narrative that you hear of, it's often gay white men who come out to their parents, and it's seen as this like one-time deal, and then it's all over and done with. So in reality, the experience of coming out is sort of a lifelong process, and it's something that people have to do over and over again. And it's also something that can change over time, where there are a lot of people who came out as one thing when they were teenagers and then sort of changed that later on and maybe went back to it. And so we're sort of looking at the stories that haven't really been told about coming out as LGBTQ. So I came out when I was pretty young. I was 14, and I was the only out queer kid in my high school, which was a pretty wild experience, and I faced some adversity as a result of it. The environment in my high school was pretty progressive, but it was also fairly religious, and so I had a lot of people who very earnestly were hoping to sort of save my soul, which was meant with the best of intentions, but wasn't necessarily what I wanted to hear at age 14. So it was certainly something that I grappled with. I was lucky in that my family was pretty supportive throughout, and I had a good sort of home base to come back to and to be able to sort of decompress in. I came out to my parents watching an episode of Party of Five, where I basically was counting in my head and was like, okay, when I get to the number 30, I'm going to tell them that I'm gay. And then I got to 30 and I was like, when I get to the number 60, then I'm going to tell them that I'm gay, and got to 60 and sort of went from there until I finally sort of came out with it. And it's sort of changed over time. I came out as a lesbian, and then a month later, I developed a crush on a boy and was like, oh no, what does this mean? And thankfully, it was introduced to sort of the Kinsey scale and to the sort of notion of fluid identity, and have since, sort of settled on queer as sort of a all-encompassing term. Well, I think the fact that they're true stories told by real people, where it's not like, I'm sitting in a room and writing things from my own experience. I get to get the voices of, we've had 200 people respond to the survey so far, and I'm working with 15 LGBT youth, and we just did workshops where I brought in LGBT people of all ages to interact with the youth and to sort of story share. And so we had, 25 adults who came to that. And so it's really a community story. It's not just a story about me or not just a story about my experiences, but it's really coming from sort of the ground up. And I think that, especially for people who haven't heard their stories told or haven't seen themselves represented in ways on TV or in film or in theater, it's a really fun opportunity to be able to sort of create those moments. Yeah, Green Chimneys is an amazing organization, and they work with, they actually their sort of main base is up in Brewster, and they started out as a teeny tiny sort of progressive school where they brought in young people who were maybe having trouble in the public school system and had them work with farm animals. And it was sort of a really progressive idea at the time, and sort of something that not other people had done. And pretty soon they realized that there was a very strong need in New York for the LGBT homeless youth. And they're actually the first organization to have programming specifically for LGBT homeless youth, and have been able to sort of maintain that for quite a few years now. The project that I'm working most closely with right now is their career training program, which is a really important program for young people who don't necessarily have parents who can, sort of make networking connections for them, who aren't able to, look over their resumes and say, oh, you got a spelling mistake here, or you should really highlight this aspect of your job. So it's giving them sort of hands-on career training to be able to sort of go into the real world and really succeed and fulfill their potential. So they've been going for many years, and so I work specifically with the career training program right now, and they also have an amazing program that is a transitional living project or program, so that they take LGBT youth who are in the foster care system or who are homeless and sort of are able to put them up in housing around the city and give them sort of a chance at independent living. And they set them up and make sure they have food stamps and Medicare and that they're in school or working, and really give them a chance and sort of an opportunity to have the stability of having a home and of having people around them who are sort of invested in who they are and what they're doing and really supportive and excited for them. Oh man, well, I feel like, it's the sort of thing where I am in there as sort of the adult and teacher type, but ultimately they end up teaching me just as much as I teach them, where I get to learn so much about, queer culture and especially LGBT youth culture. They're also just such a wealth of passion and of energy, where I feel like, so many of the older LGBT folks I know are sort of jaded and sort of, that whole gay thing, but they're like just coming into this new identity and are just sort of figuring out who they are. And there's something really magical about being able to be a part of that and being able to be surrounded by that, to remember, oh yeah, this isn't just, something that I experience in my little bubble. Like, this is a really big thing and a really big sort of honor to be a part of this whole community that exists. I feel like as the only queer person growing up in my high school, openly queer person, a bunch of them came out after high school, but I definitely experienced a certain amount of isolation and sort of loneliness, feeling like I didn't have a community, and like, the people around me were not people who I could talk to about my crushes and about, all of those things that you want to be able to chat with people about. And so I think that offering a place where young people can do that, and also where they can grapple with the really hard issues of, like, how to deal with their parents or how to deal with the religious community, and sort of give them a home base for those issues and for those sorts of support. A lot of them are sort of come out of nowhere. I feel like I'm very lucky in that I have had a number of people sort of approach me with opportunities. And similarly, I do a lot of, looking for grants and looking for scholarships and things like that can help me do the work that I really feel passionate about. And because the work that I do is so creative and is so based in the needs of the community, where it's as much as possible, we sort of go into a community and see what they want to do, as opposed to us sort of coming in with an idea, just because it works so much better and there's so much more ownership over the project if they really get to create it themselves. And so it's a really great opportunity for me to be able to do things that I wouldn't necessarily have thought of doing before, but can get really interested in. This particular organization I got connected to through Urban Stages, which is an off-Broadway theater company on the West Side, and they have an excellent outreach program, and they got a grant to do work with LGBT homeless youth and found Green Chimneys through a guy named Bill Bowers, who's an amazing mime and performer and like all around pretty rad guy, and they managed to get funding for a grant, and so we've been able to go there. I think it's been 4 years now that I've worked with them and been able to do theater projects and sort of video projects and things like that to give them a chance, to give these young people a chance to sort of have fun and express themselves, and also be a kid for a while, whereas like so many of them are dealing with things that are so adult and are so, so beyond their age. And so being able to, toss a paper ball around is really fun and really, I think, important for developmental and for healing and all those sorts of things. I'm really excited. Starting in September, I'm going to be working on an LGBT intergenerational project where I work with youth and seniors from SAGE, which is an LGBT elders organization. And it's an organization that I was able to be a participant in before and really enjoyed the sort of dialogue that happened between the two groups, where I feel like both teenagers and elders are groups of people who are often sort of looked over in our society and who are also sort of viewed with a certain amount of fear in our society. And being able to get those two groups together and sort of have that incredible wealth of knowledge that sort of spans the generations, and also the like conflicts and the things that are, where someone might identify as queer, but someone who's older sees that very distinctly as a slur. And so it's, offensive to them to hear it at all. And so, the sort of negotiation of the intergenerational experience. Yeah, I mean, I would love to be able to continue to create sort of work in communities in sort of whatever way that manifests. I mean, right now I'm working, I tend to work, a number of jobs at once, where I'm usually working on 3 or 4 projects at a time. And it would be great if I was in a place where I could work on one for a while and, sort of have all of my focus there. To have a theater company where I can sort of work with people who I feel like have interesting stories to tell and who have voices that need to be heard, and sort of be able to put that out there in ways that haven't been done yet. It's interesting. I sort of have, it's always sort of a fluid relationship between the sort of scripted devising stuff. And I often find that when I try and sit down and write a script sort of by myself, I have a really hard time, where I think because I am so inspired by other people's stories and other people's experiences, that at least for me personally, it's really exciting and way more interesting to have the other people involved in what I'm doing. Who knows? Maybe I'll get tired of that eventually and be able to do work on my own. But for now, I definitely prefer community experience.